Imagine finding the perfect home for your growing family in Halifax. The extra bedrooms, the bigger yard, the neighborhood that you've hoped to move into. But there's one big problem. Your current home hasn't sold yet. Do you buy the new home and risk carrying two mortgages? Or do you sell first and risk losing the house that you love? Right now, this is one of the biggest questions Halifax homeowners are asking me in 2026. And the answer in today's market is very different from what it was just a few years ago. So, in this video, I'm gonna break down the buy first versus sell first strategy of Halifax for upsizers, the risks that you need to understand, and the smart way many families are navigating the market right now today. Hi everyone. If we haven't met before, my name's Logan Tomczyk and I'm your real life realtor here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I work with a lot of growing families who started out in their first home and are now looking for something bigger with an extra bedroom, a bigger yard, or simply just moving into neighborhoods like Bedford, Fall River, or the south end of Halifax. And one of the biggest strategic decisions that these families face are the question of, do we buy our new home first, or do we sell our current home first before we look at buying a new one? To understand the best strategy for upsizing in Halifax right now, we need to talk about how the market has changed. For several years, Halifax was in an extremely strong seller's market. Homes, they were selling quickly. Multiple offers were not a common, but it was every single offer and every single property. And buyers had to move very fast. In that kind of environment, buying before selling was incredibly risky. If you bought a home first, your existing home didn't sell quickly, you could end up carrying two mortgages. So the safest strategy for most people was to sell their home first, but the Halifax market in 2026 looks a little bit different than it did during the COVID periods. Inventory has increased, homes are taking longer to sell, and we're now in what real estate professionals like myself call a balanced market. Now, that might sound like bad news for sellers, but for upsizers, it actually creates something quite interesting for opportunities, because buyers suddenly have more negotiating power. There's more inventory to choose from and more time to plan their next move carefully, which means that both strategies of buying first and selling first are now possible again. And it really is going to come down to your specific situation. So let me start with a more traditional approach, selling your home first. The biggest advantage here, you have financial certainty. Once your home sells, you know exactly how much money you have available for your next purchase. You know what your down payment is going to be. You know what your price range is going to be. And when you make an offer on your next home, you're coming in as a stronger buyer with no sale of buyer's property or conditions attached. And that can make your offer much more attractive to sellers, because usually less conditions means for a stronger offer. But there is a downside, and it's one that many families worry about: timing. Because once your home sells, the countdown begins. You need to find your next home before your closing date, or you might be moving into an Airbnb or your parents' home until you find that next home for you and your family. If the right house doesn't come along quickly, these temporary accommodations, they could create a lot of stress. And that could mean renting for a few months, putting furniture in storage, moving twice in a short period of time. And if you have kids, that can add a lot of disruption to your daily routine. The one thing that I will say when negotiating the sale of your home we don't just focus on the price that we get. We also focused on the dates that the buyers are willing to agree to. So for my seller clients who also need to buy a new home, my go-to strategy is to have 2 weeks for buyer's conditions and then at least 3 months for closing after the condition date has been met. That way, we have 3 months to find your new home and do our due diligence so we can move with confidence. Now let's take a look at the other approach, buying your next home first. This is the option many families prefer emotionally, because instead of rushing to find something after your home sells, you've already secured your next home first. So you know exactly where you're moving, you can know possibly when you're moving, and then once you have all this information of what your next home is going to be, then you can sell your property afterwards. That eliminates the risk of temporary housing, but of course, it introduces a different kind of risk. There's a financial risk with this one, because if your home doesn't sell quickly, you could end up carrying 2 mortgage payments at the same time. And that's where some important tools come into play here that I like to recommend for all of my seller clients who end up buying a home first. The first tool is bridge financing. Bridge financing is essentially a short-term loan that allows you to access the equity in your current home before it sells. It bridges the gap between the purchase of your new home and the sale of your old one. Typically, this loan only lasts for a few weeks, but it does help a bit with the finances and helps with the timing. And many Halifax buyers use it to make their move smoother. We'll make sure that our mortgage broker is on top of everything and in the loop before we either buy or sell first. That way, we can be prepared for your specific situation for what strategy works best for you. The second strategy is something called a subject to sale of buyer's property condition. This means that you offer on a new home is conditional based on the successful sale of your current property. Regardless of how great a deal looks, I always tell my clients to add in this condition when buying a new home if their current home hasn't sold yet. That way, you're always protected for anything that could come up in the market. Now, on the surface, it sounds simple, but depending on the market conditions, your finances, and your timeline, these decisions can mean the difference between a smooth move or a very stressful one. So today, I'm gonna walk you through the pros and cons of both of these approaches, how the 2026 Halifax real estate market has changed the strategy, and the tools that buyers are using right now to make upsizing much more safer of a decision. Now, a few years ago in Halifax, sellers almost never accepted this condition. The market was simply too competitive. But in today's more balanced market, we're seeing sellers become much more flexible. There's definitely more understanding of what's going on in the market now. So let me give you a real example of a friend of mine. They were a family living in a starter home in Dartmouth. Their family was growing quickly and they really wanted and really needed more space. Their dream was to move into a bigger home for their future children. The challenge was that they were nervous about selling first and not finding the right home in time that fit their needs. But they were also worried about the risk of carrying on 2 mortgages at the same time. Anyone would be worried about that. So what they did was they created a very clear strategy. First, they evaluated their current home and looked at recent sales in their neighborhood. They weren't comparing Dartmouth homes to Bedford or Fall River to their home because it was outside of their market. They worked with their mortgage broker to confirm bridge financial options. They allowed them to confidently make an offer on a home that they loved in Bedford, and once their offer was accepted, they listed their existing home with a targeted pricing strategy and strong marketing. And guess what? It sold within a few days. Multiple offers over asking price to ensure that they got a future home quickly. They undervalued their current home, and it was all part of their strategy, and it worked out perfectly for them. They avoided moving twice. They still ended up with a price that they were happy with. They didn't just give their home away, and they secured the home that they really wanted. And the entire process was much less stressful than they had expected. If you're currently living in a starter home in Halifax or anywhere in Nova Scotia and you're thinking about upsizing, the smartest thing that you can do is build a strategy before you start looking at homes. Because the decision between buying first and selling first, it depends on several factors. Your finances, your timeline, and how specific your neighborhood is for where you want to move next. So, if you'd like help creating a plan for your next move, comment the word move below and I'll help you evaluate your home, understand your options, and map out the best strategy to move into your next home with confidence. Upsizing is an exciting step for many families, but it's also one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make. The good news is that the 2026 Halifax market gives buyers more flexibility than what we've seen in recent years. And with the right planning, you can move into your next home smoothly and confidently. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe to this channel because I post weekly videos about Halifax real estate, market updates, and strategies to help homeowners make smart moves. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.